Today we're going to talk about is silver. Let's get straight to the point. Everyone, as you all know, in the past couple of days, silver has been leading the decline. Do you still remember how I've said it again and again? I've said it again and again for the past 2 years. I've been doing YouTube for 2 years in total. I've said it repeatedly. Gold should be your first choice. Gold should be your first choice. Gold should be your first choice. It's best if you don't diversify your investments. Why? Because you don't have money. It's just that simple. Let me tell you stories in different ways. For example, when you have very little money, don't try to imitate others by putting your eggs in different baskets, because you only have half an egg, or maybe you only have an eggshell. What are you even diversifying your investments for? Other people have 100 million, 200 million, that kind of capital, so they can afford to diversify. To put it bluntly, even the 200,000 RMB you swiped from your credit card at the bank, what are you even diversifying your investments for? You really don't need to diversify your investments. So that's why I've always said gold is like Bitcoin. And if you want a comparison for silver, it's Ethereum. Haven't I always said this? And I've always been telling you, historically, gold always moves first, and silver follows. Historically, the gold-silver price ratio before the gold standard, that is, from the year 1080 to 1783 AD, the gold-silver price ratio was between 1 to 10 and 1 to 15. A 1 to 15 gold-silver ratio means 1 gram of gold equals about 15 grams of silver. 15 grams of silver equaled 1 gram of gold. The year 1783 was a watershed moment in between. 1783 marked humanity's first systematic financial crisis. Following the European financial crisis of 1783, central banks around the world returned to the gold standard. So gold suddenly became scarce. So after 1783, the gold-silver ratio is 1 gram of gold equal to 35 grams of silver. This continued until before World War II. This proportion, before World War II, the price of gold is approximately 20 per ounce. After World War II, the Bretton Woods system fixed gold at 35 an ounce. In other words, the price of silver should be $1 per ounce. All these are all guiding principles you should have in your mind. If you don't understand these things at all, MT5, MT4, I've been emphasizing to you how to unplug the network cable, how to draw lines, how to blow up Zhang Weisheng's position, and how in 2008 Zhang Weisheng's long gold position was liquidated. On the other hand, the lesson written in blood is to never use leverage. Do you hear me? Never go long using the bank's money. Otherwise, you will be wiped out completely. You just won't listen, huh? You just won't listen. Did you understand the basic data I just talked about? Let me ask you, in 1783, which was before the emergence of modern finance, and after the emergence of modern finance, what should the gold to silver ratio have been in 1783? 1 to 15. Remember, 1 to 15. After 1783 and before World War II, what was it? 1 to 35. Remember that. After World War II, under the Bretton Woods system, the price of gold was $35 per ounce. What was the price of silver at that time? $1 per ounce. Remember, 1 to 35. That's how it came about. So, what was the price of gold before World War II? $20 per ounce. And it stayed that way for a long time. For several years, it was $20 per ounce. And it kept going up. How much gold was in $1? How much gold was in $1? $1, the dollar actually had gold in it back then, in 1783, not long after the American Revolutionary War ended. After the founding of the United States, when the US started issuing the dollar, $1 contained 1.505 grams of gold. In other words, one had 1.5 grams of real gold in it. That's why US coins are still yellow today. It's because there's gold in them. They're not made of copper. You see, there was 1.5 grams of gold inside each one. This was before World War II. After World War II, they really did become copper. But it's to commemorate this that they are yellow. It's called a buck, the US dollar. Remember, it's not called $1, it's called a buck. Why? Because it had a deer head printed on it. deer head buck, B-U-C-K. So how much gold was in a Canadian dollar? Canada and the US have always had an integrated economy. Even before World War II, they were already joined together. So in the Canadian dollar, each Canadian dollar contained 1.5 grams of gold. 1.5 grams of gold. That's why the Canadian dollar is called the loonie, because it has a duck printed on it. It's also yellow. In terms of size and weight, its purity is almost identical to the US dollar. The difference is just between 99 and 100. 1 is exactly 1.5 grams for the Canadian dollar, while the US dollar is exactly 1.505 grams. Did you hear that? These are all basic concepts. Basic concepts. Once you know these things, you'll understand how the US dollar started to depreciate, why it could depreciate, why it's used. You accept copper and paper. Post-war, the US emerged as the sole superpower. That order was bought with 20 million lives. It was the post-war order and balance. But what's the situation now? Now, there is no more order and balance. Order and balance can no longer be maintained. That's why gold is rising now, and the price of gold is surging again. The real reason isn't that everyone is speculating on gold, so stop always talking about speculating on gold. That's just the nonsense of idiots in the crypto circle. Do you understand? The real reason, the fundamental reason is the depreciation of the US dollar. Why is the US dollar depreciating? The root cause is the decline of America's national strength. Why does the US no longer have that national strength? Why is America's national strength declining? Why has it declined? Some people refuse to admit it, but it doesn't matter if you don't admit it. Because the US no longer has its allies. Look at the UK, and countries like Canada are drifting further and further away from the US. This is a trend, you know. I'm not a pro-China fanboy, nor am I anti-China. Objective facts. America's national strength and the US economy are booming. After the main topic, after I finish talking about the main points with everyone, I'll share with you what I've seen and heard in LA. The economy there really is unbelievably good. But this is how America should be. After World War II, it was even more prosperous than it is today. Because at that time, the US was the engine of the world. Now, the US can only barely serve as the engine of the Americas. Just the engine of the Americas, you know. Of course, that's still impressive. It's still much stronger than Canada, after all. So the US dollar is no longer as dominant as before, which leads to the rise in gold prices. What's more, now it has a powerful rival, an opponent strong enough to challenge its national strength, and that's China. The Chinese government is stockpiling large amounts of gold, which is why gold prices have been rising in the US. And as gold prices rise, let me tell you all again, the rise in gold prices will never actually, what I'm saying today is something I've repeated many times before. Gold prices will never just go up in a straight line. The rise in gold prices is always wave-like. And after this major upward trend is established, every drop or sharp decline is just an opportunity for you to get on board. Do you understand? Because you haven't used leverage, and you haven't gone all in, so naturally, you can add a bit more each time. So when gold surges sharply, when it rises like a wall, that's actually when you can sell some. Why? Especially when silver rises like a wall. Why can't you sell some gold then? Because it means COMEX can't hold on anymore. That is, the old money in London and New York, the old financial families can't hold on anymore. But why do they have to hold on? Because they are market makers. Understand? There are market makers for gold prices and for silver as well. So when they have nothing left to deliver, if you keep pushing them, you'll end up forcing them into bankruptcy. You know, COMEX is COMEX, the Commodity Exchange COMEX. COMEX is the New York Mercantile Exchange, one of the world's largest precious metals and commodity options and futures trading center for spot and futures. It's located in New York, but it belongs to the Chicago Mercantile Exchange Group. That's COMEX. So when we talk about it, we often refer to COMEX gold prices. When we talk about the international gold price, how many US dollars per ounce? We're referring to COMEX. COMEX, in our minds, COMEX seems so sacred. It's as if it's like the Shanghai Stock Exchange or the Shenzhen Stock Exchange, a state-owned institution. But that's not the case. No, 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 it's not. This is America, not China. It's a private institution. It's a private organization. Standing right behind it are the individuals, are those big families. Old money families from the East Coast. Old money families from London. So, by its very nature, it is naturally at odds with these emerging forces in the market. A 20 or 30% plunge in silver prices today is really nothing at all. I'm telling you, it's really nothing. Listen to me. It's nothing. It's really not. Some people even say it's the biggest in history. You really haven't studied history. A 20 or 30% drop in silver, even 50%, that's what you call historic? In silver's history, it's dropped 80%. You might ask, oh Wang, are you talking about the time of Marco Polo? No, I'm talking about modern times. I'm talking about after I was already born. Silver dropped from 100 to 80, dropped to 20, from 50 down to $10. Why is that? It's because the situation was exactly the same as today. All the financial experts today, as long as they don't mention this point, they don't really understand gold and silver. Why does silver lead the decline? Because the difference between silver and gold is that silver is an important industrial raw material. There is a huge demand for physical silver. That's why COMEX always stockpiles physical silver year-round. Really, it's used for physical delivery. And in the last silver bull market last month, the demand for physical delivery of SEAL, the long positions in silver already far exceeded the COMEX inventory. Their inventory is in silver ingots. Let me ask you, if you were the boss of the exchange, let's say you have 5,000 tons. 5,000 tons. With that much silver, you'd feel safe because only about 4,500 to 4,800 tons leave the exchange annually. You know exactly where you stand. It's always been like this. But suddenly, there was financial demand for silver. This never happened before because it was an industrial product. In the past, it was just an industrial product. Financial demand was almost negligible. Suddenly, financial demand became the main factor, and it was 10 or even 100 times greater than the demand for the actual commodity. At this point, the 5,000 tons of silver you have on hand, for example, let's say it's not really 5,000 tons. I'm just giving an example. If there were buy orders for 500,000 tons of silver when you only have 5,000 tons, what would you do? Let me ask you, would you deliver the goods? Can you deliver? Can you afford to deliver? What would you use to deliver? So they have to use leverage to entice you and then force you into liquidation. What if they can't force you into liquidation? If they can't do it, they'll change the rules. They'll only allow selling, not buying. You might say, Uncle Wang, are you just telling stories? This is the New York Mercantile Exchange, the world's largest precious metals commodity exchange. How could they possibly say, starting today, that only selling is allowed, not buying? Did I ever say it would be 50,000 per ounce? Some idiot is nitpicking here. What I'm fucking saying is that $50,000 per ounce has a fucking premise. You're such a dumbass. My premise is that I'm the president of the United States. If it drops from 120 to 75, that's impressive. But as I'm saying today, it could go from 120 to 30, or even 25, as it must fall 5 times. Dropping from 120 to 70 isn't even a single fold decrease. Not even one. Right now, it's all retail investors in the market, no big players stepping in. If a big player does show up, when it's a life or death struggle, a 5-fold drop wouldn't be surprising at all. A 5-fold drop isn't surprising. So when I say gold could rise to 40 or 50,000, there's a premise to that. What I'm saying is, if the US can't get rid of its treasury bonds, and I'm the president, I wouldn't even need digital currency to dump US treasuries because the bulk of the gold is in the US. I would just push the price of gold up to 40 or 50,000. The US holds 8,000 tons of gold reserves. I could instantly get rid of my US treasuries. That's how I play. And there's nothing others could do about it. If you want to sell, I'll buy. If you sell, I'll take it because you don't have any gold. How are you going to sell? All right, got it. That's how it hits 40,000. But I'm not the president of the United States. Don't mess with me if that's the case. How high could it go? 2 days ago, a few days ago at the meeting, I had already told everyone before it dropped, how high should it rise? That is, before World War II, the normal price ratio between gold and the US GDP. If, theoretically speaking, it should rise to that level. If the Bretton Woods system hadn't interfered, and it had always been a gold standard, it should have risen to that level, which by my calculations is $10,836. This is based on data. There's data to support it.